Hello there, I'm Kelly Carter, host of Another Act. Coming up, I finally sit down with Zoe Kravitz. We talk about her playing Catwoman in The Batman and so much more. Zoe Kravitz is no stranger to Hollywood. Her recent projects include HBO's hit drama, Big Little Lies, and Hulu's very favorably reviewed rom-com series, High Fidelity, where Zoe acted as Rob Brooks. Now, she's starring in the culturally historical role of Catwoman in the new DC film, The Batman. Zoe, of course, is the daughter of legendary singer-songwriter and actor Lenny Kravitz and actress Lisa Bonet, and she talks about the impact that her parents had on her confidence and her career. We also discuss her favorite Saturday Night Live skits and about hosting the show for the very first time. Join us as we dive into another act with Zoe Kravitz. Zoe, I want to actually start our conversation by telling you how obsessed I was with High Fidelity. I loved so much about it, but mostly I loved watching you lead a series and command a screen. What was the experience like for you, and how did that change you with regards to projects you picked after that series was wrapped?
Thank you so much, first of all. It means a lot that you like the show and connected to it in general. I worked really hard on that show and had so much love for it. When you put your heart and soul into things, people will respond, you know. Unfortunately, we didn't get to continue, but I really, focused on trying to make something that I wanted to see, I really wanted people to relate to, that kind of a character, seeing a woman of color play a character like that, seeing that version of New York. And even though it didn't, we didn't get to continue, hearing people like you say that you felt connected to that show is everything. And it encourages me to continue to write and produce and participate in projects that come from real experience and from the heart, so we can continue to tell stories that matter to us.
I mean, if nothing else, it definitely doubled down on just your presence on camera and really showing everyone in this industry that you can and you should be, a certified leading lady, which I would imagine in some ways kind of gets us to your role in The Batman. Tell me about your pathway to Catwoman. How did that happen for you?
You're so sweet. Thank you so much. I like you. Let's see. I mean, I remember getting the phone call from my agent that they were doing a Batman movie and that I was on the list of actors they wanted to meet for Catwoman. And even getting that call that I was even on that list was insane. Like, that would have been, if it ended right there, I still would have been happy that I was on that list. And, throughout my career, there's been plenty of jobs that I've wanted and haven't gotten. So I really tried to manage my own expectations and not get too excited, because it can be heartbreaking when you don't get something that you want. And so I went to meet Matt, the director, and that made it even harder because he's so wonderful and such an artist. And telling me about his vision he had for the film, it was so interesting and so complex, and his references were all these great 70s noir films, and that was so exciting to me. And then I got to read the script, and it was so wonderful, and the character of Selena was so rich and complex and human, and that was really, just exciting, because it's so rare that we get to, have a complex female character in films like this. And then, so every step, it would get closer and closer, and I would just try and relax and, again, not get too excited. And then I got to chemistry read with Rob, and he was wonderful, and it was just like, oh, it's like close, I can taste it, but you still never know. And then, a week or so went by, and Matt called me and told me that, he wanted to hire me, and that was just one of the craziest days of my life. And then the announcement came out soon after that, and, just also getting the reaction from the world and from friends and family too, and really feeling the reality of how big of a deal this was and how much people love this character. It's a big responsibility, and, you don't want to let the fans down because, they love this world so much. So, yeah, it was like a roller coaster.
I would about imagine. I'm going to assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you've experienced Catwoman before you became Catwoman. Who was your Catwoman? I know that's a hard question to answer. I mean, we love Eartha Kitt, we love Halle Berry, Michelle Pfeiffer, is in that mix too. Who was your Catwoman and why?
Yeah, I mean, all of the women have done such an incredible job, and they've all done a great job of making it their own. I think, of course, Eartha Kitt specifically, because seeing a black woman on a show like that at that time, breaking all the rules, being so sexy and funny and smart and all of those things, that was just revolutionary, of course. And I think because of the age I was at, and I was, such a big Tim Burton fan, Michelle Pfeiffer's version was, just absolutely iconic and so playful and, just naughty and clever and all of that. So I love that. I love that film.
Were you a fan of DC Comics growing up?
I was never a big comic person. I had a lot of friends that were really into it. I was always very into the Batman universe, mostly because of the films, though, and getting to, dive a little bit into that, obviously not being a part of the world. But the thing that I think is so cool about Batman is that it goes beyond the comic world. I think it's such an intriguing world. It's like Shakespeare. We tell it over and over and over and over again. And because the world of Gotham and the characters of Batman and all the villains within that world are so interesting, I think, comic book fans and people who, don't read comics, it's a really interesting place where they can all come together. And it's like just this incredible cultural phenomenon.
No, I totally agree. What was it like the first day you slid into that suit? What did it feel like for you?
It was crazy. It was crazy, especially because, Matt and Jacqueline, our costume designer, they were so wonderfully collaborative in terms of just, who Selena is and what she would wear and what that would feel like. So I really got to be a part of the process, and we're meeting Selena before she's Catwoman. So what was really interesting about developing the suit was that it isn't the cat suit. It's something that she wears when she rides her motorcycle, and we were trying to find elements of that could kind of hint to what will one day be the cat suit. And so, designing the motorcycle suit, and Matt had that wonderful idea of, wearing the mask and having like the kind of illusion of very, very subtle cat ears, and making sure that the mask had a place to go in terms of, I really wanted the mask at one point. I was like, can't it go over the nose, And he was like, no, we know that's the mask. We know that. So it has to start somewhere else, and it has to be more DIY. And then, the next film, hopefully when she becomes Catwoman, it will get there. So it was really fun developing all of that and finding places to put those hints. And then walking onto set wearing, the mask and the motorcycle suit, and getting to play with all that latex too. It's all it's crazy. It's insane. It's so fun.
I love it. Was there any trepidation with how you approached this character? Because we have seen her in earlier generations, different iterations, different actresses, as we talked about earlier, bringing her to life. What was the challenge for you stepping into a role that we know pretty well and that we've seen before in film and television?
Well, luckily for me, a lot of the work was done for me in the script. This was a very different version of Selena than we'd seen before. It was a very human version. It was a very, very vulnerable version, and very angry version. And so, thankfully, a lot was on the page. And I think the most difficult part was really kind of allowing myself to forget that she is Catwoman and what that means, culturally, because, whenever I would see myself kind of slip into doing something that I thought Catwoman would do, it didn't feel organic, and Matt would always catch it. He would always, he would see some kind of affectation and tell me not to do that. And it really was about playing the character from the inside out, not from the outside in, and not playing an idea of Catwoman, but really playing a woman who lives in Gotham, who's had a really hard life, who, is a survivor and is angry and scared and, and astray herself, So, just focusing on playing a real human being was the real goal.
where did you draw from in order to build her? Because that's something that I noticed as a common thread with, I think, a lot of the characters that you've brought to life over the course of your career is that they're multi-layered. There's a quietness about them, but we know that there's like something deep-seated that's going to be revealed eventually about these characters.
Yeah, I guess I do. I mean, I think with Selena specifically, I think we've all felt alone at one point or another, and felt abandoned in some way. And again, so much of it was on the page. And of course, I haven't had a life like Selena's had. But, the idea of a woman who was once a little girl, alone in this city, having to find her way and, that really just broke my heart. I would read the script and I would sometimes cry for her. And thinking about how many women have felt that way, So, I wasn't necessarily drawing from my own life, but, I have friends and family who have had really hard times and wanting to explore that on camera.
I'm going to go ahead and give you a congratulations on hosting SNL. I screamed when I saw that news. Dream come true for you?
Yeah, definitely a dream come true. I've been a huge fan of the show for a very long time. I'm very nervous, but very excited. And it's a milestone for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite SNL moments? Because I have to say, one of my favorite SNL moments involves you. It was when Childish Gambino performed, and when I saw you come out, I was like, what? Zoe's here. What's happening? What's going down? So what about yourself? Do you have a favorite SNL moment over the years?
I mean, yeah, that was a great night. His performances, his whole thing, but also just those musical performances were just so special. I got to go see Jason hosted a while ago, and that was a big dream for him too, and he was so funny. And and I don't know, there's so many great sketches, I'm a huge fan of like the Maya Rudolph and Kristen Wiig time was kind of when that was like one of my favorite eras of SNL. And I don't know, I just think there's so many great skits. I want to do Black Jeopardy. I hope they let me do Black Jeopardy. I think that's such a funny bit.
Ooh, yes. Let's make that happen, please. The answer is always Wakanda, I think. What is your measuring stick for a job well done? Like, what has to happen in your career for you to actually pat yourself on the back?
I think just knowing that I did the best I could do, you know what I mean? I think it's less about, what other people think. I think if I feel like I did my best, that's really all I can ask of myself, and not that there's not room, to get better and that I won't, harshly critique myself. But I think the only times I really beat myself up is when I feel like I could have done better. I could have put more work in, So I really think it's just about pouring all of yourself into what you do and hopefully being proud of it. I think it really does mean everything if you can be proud of something that you made, and then you just hope that other people are connected to it too.
Other people are definitely connected to the work that you do. I went back in my archives and realized about 10 years ago I interviewed a guy that I think legendary rocker Lenny Kravitz, and I realized that we talked a lot about you and about you entering this world of cinema in this space. And one thing that stuck with me that he told me is that he said at a very young age, you knew who you were. And he said it takes so long for so many of us to start to figure out who we really are, but that was the thing that he really admired about you. And of course, I joked with him and I said, I wonder where she gets that from. And he laughed, but in all seriousness, where does that come from? Because your dad is correct. That is not an easy thing to do. And you always, from the time that you kind of were introduced to us inside of this industry, carried yourself with that confidence of someone who knew who she was at an exceptionally early age.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. I mean, I don't know. I think some of that is just my spirit, just who I am as a person. But I was also, I've been very lucky to grow up in a very encouraging, artistic, safe environment where I was, given the privilege to be myself, and a lot of people don't have that, whether it be from their parents or from the world. Even my parents, they had wonderful parents themselves, but the time that they were growing up in, the world was not ready. They didn't know what they were and all of that. And I was really shielded from that because, they kind of learned from their own experience and, really gave me a safe environment to explore who I was as a person, as an artist, to make sure to communicate to me that they loved me no matter what and no matter who I was. And so I do think that allowed me to feel free enough to be myself and to feel confident in who I am.
And I would imagine that plays a role in how you actually choose roles that you wanna go after. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what do you find yourself mitigating towards when people bring scripts your way, when they reach out to your agents or your managers? What do you say has to be in place for you to say, I do want to go in and talk about this role?
There's not like a particular thing. It's just about, I think mostly it's about something new. I think if it's a story or a character that that I know already or that we've seen before, I don't really, that doesn't really interest me just because we've seen it before, So there has to be something fresh about it. There has to be something scary about it, because that means you're kind of stepping outside of your comfort zone. I think that's really important as an artist. And yeah, something that just either moves me in some way, makes me feel emotional, and whatever emotion. If I read a script and it makes me laugh out loud when reading it, like, yes, let's go. Or if it makes me cry, or I just want to be a part of stories that make me feel things.
Is there a particular genre that makes you uncomfortable that you purposefully pick to push yourself out of that your comfort zone?
I don't know, not particularly. I think because I think all the genres have, they're all kind of scary in their own way. Comedy's really, really hard because it's all about timing. It's like a science in a lot of ways, and I really respect people who are able to do that. And then drama, of course, is its own beast. So it's all scary in the best way. Yeah.
What's next for you?
I'm directing a film. I'm directing my first film that I wrote, and we're doing that soon. That starts in the summer, so I'm getting ready to prep for that.
That goes back to how we opened this conversation, really about creating your own path and making your own way and putting out characters, and I would imagine stories that we don't often get to see. Tell me about doing that as a director, because that's something that we're starting to see this generation of actors do a little bit earlier than we're seeing. Halle Berry just directed her first film, earlier this year after, 30 years of a career. Why is now the time for you to do that?
That's a really good point. And I think it's really, it's just about us as a culture growing and evolving and encouraging each other, and making space for that, And I think, for example, Halle's generation, it just wasn't encouraged the way that it is now. And so I'm so happy that it's moving the way it's moving. I'm so happy that her generation is also getting a chance to do that, because I'm sure that's been something that has been inside of her for a long time, And so, and I think there's also just, not only is there space for it, but there's a need for that. There's always, I think people are really tired of seeing the same kinds of stories from the same perspective over and over and over again. And so, it's there's so much content out there too. I think it's really about, okay, if we're going to make things, let's make something that, is actually needed, not just going to take up space. And I think, hearing from, younger voices, women's voices, Black, gay, everybody, I just think it's like there's so much room and so much to explore. So we should do it.
Well, look, I'm ready for Zoe Kravitz to take over the world. Director, actor, singer, whatever she wants to do, she should do it. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Zoe. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You're so wonderful, and thank you for all your kind words. I really appreciate it.
Of course, continued success.
Thank you.